In this exercise, we're going to create a painted brushstroke to reveal this cassette graphic onto the wall, in essence, painting it into the scene. And we're going to use that same stroke again on the background, adding a little more visual interest to the reveal. So in the timeline, I want you to select layer 2, which is our cassette layer, and press Ctrl D on Windows or Command D on the Mac to duplicate. Then turn off the visibility of layer 2, our duplicate layer, and double click on layer 3 to open it in the Layers panel. Now to paint, let's switch to the Paint workspace. I'll click on the double arrows and change it to Paint. Once in Paint, I'll go up to the upper left, and in my tool panel, I'll grab the paintbrush tool. Then I'll come back over Paint here and click on this top chip to make sure I have this nice purple blue color selected. And I'll click OK. Then we can come down to the brushes area. And in the brushes, I want you to go ahead and change the diameter. So I'll click on the diameter and I want you to choose 280 for the size of the diameter. And if you scroll down here a little bit and make the timeline a little smaller, under roundness, I want to bring the roundness setting to around 80. So now it's more of an oval, and we can leave the hardness set to 0. Then, last but not least, under Paint, I want the duration set to right on. That way it'll record the speed at which I'm actually painting the brushstrokes. Now, before we start painting the brushstrokes, let's position our current time indicator to frame 0, since that'll be where the brushstrokes will start. Now, click and drag to paint directly over top of the cassette tape as fast as you can. There we go. So, if I select layer 3 and press PP on my keyboard, that will open up the paint effect and its brushstroke. So if I open up brush 1 here, you'll notice it actually animates in over 6.5 seconds. I want to change that, so I'll select layer 3 and I want you to press the U key on your keyboard to reveal any animated properties. And click on this second keyframe and drag it all the way to about 1 second in the timeline. Now if I press the space bar here, you'll see there's my brush stroke. Now, I'll press the space bar to stop playback because I want you to collapse the paint option in the timeline and open it up again. And for paint on transparent, I want to change it from off to on. So now if we look at layer 3 and solo that layer, just by clicking the solo button here, you'll see it's actually just animating only the brush stroke, which is what we want. But I want this brush stroke to be the fill for the cassette tape. So I'll toggle my switches and modes and go over to the track mat and click on the drop down and choose Alpha Matte Cassette 2. And so now as I scrub through, you can see the paint strokes are actually revealing the cassette tape. Now let's turn off solo for the cassette layer and change its blend mode from normal to linear light. And you can see it's definitely blending with the background a little bit. Now, I want to collapse layer 3 and we'll add one more layer of paint in here. I'll select layer 3 and press Ctrl D on Windows or Command D on the Mac. And we'll go to cassette 3, which is the new duplicate layer, and change this track mat to none. And let's position cassette 3 just above the spatter layer. And I'll press T to open the opacity, and we'll bring that setting down to around 45. Actually, you know what? We'll bring it down to around 30%. And now I want the cassette to animate in second. So if we scrub, you'll notice they're both animating at the exact same time. So I'll select layer 3 and I'll move it down the timeline just a little bit. So now we actually have this pink purple layer animate in, and then we have the cassette actually animate into the scene.